Hello, I'm Marcella Walsh, Conference Content Coordinator at Avixa, and I'm super excited to bring you Tide Spotlight, Don't Be So Static. This pre-recorded presentation is brought to you by Sasha Harris Cronin of BBI Engineering and Maria Mortati of Maria Mortati Experience Design. They'll be talking about shared experiences and COVID-19's impact. During the playback, you'll be able to chat with them and with each other using the chat window to the right of your screen. You can also submit questions in the Q&A tab to the right of your screen and upvote your favorites. After the playback, Sasha and Maria will answer your questions live. Enjoy.
Hi.
Hi. How's it going on that side of San Francisco?
Doing okay, doing all right. And hey to everybody else. My name is Sasha Harris Cronin. I'm with BBI Engineering. We are an AV integrator. I've been here for about 18 years and BBI's been around for about 35 years. And we specialize in the weird stuff, the things you touch, you play with. We do museums, we do executive briefing centers, high-end presentation spaces, and my background specifically is in interactive art and technology.
Cool, very impressive. Hi, I have a background in fine art and interaction design, and I've spent the last 20 years focusing exclusively on museums and public spaces. And I focus on projects that are interactive and participatory, very social projects. And I've worked in science museums like the Exploratorium or for science, art, history museums. And I've worked with a lot of different technologies and a lot of different approaches over the years, and it's really great work. I love it.
And Maria and I have been working and teaching together on and off for like 15 years or something like that. And we wanted to talk a little bit together about kind of how things are changing. And as we all know, everything is changing, but specifically how they're changing in the space of interaction in public spaces. You know, we're all getting a lot of calls about, what do I do? I can't touch the touch screen. How are people going to interact with each other and technology in public spaces right now? And so to start the conversation, one of the first things we did was revisit, why do people go to public spaces? You know, why do people want to interact with technology in public spaces?
And I think that's a good place to start because, you know, people go to public spaces for a lot of different reasons because there are as many different reasons as there are people. But they want to do things that they can't do. Normally, they want to have experiences that are larger than themselves. They want to be able to touch things and learn things that in more informal and sometimes magical ways that they can't do otherwise. And they want to kind of engage their emotions. They want to be able to have like a sense of awe about something, or they want to have ideas that really resonate with themselves and kind of make them feel a part of something larger than they are. And they want to engage other senses when doing this. And then a lot of people, most importantly, I think we want to have a shared experience. These are social experiences by and large, and we want to feel, especially now, that we are sharing something in real time, at the same time. So
yeah, and I think we can still lean on a lot of that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I think we can still collaborate in real space. You know, we can still engage our bodies, and we can still engage, very specifically, we can still engage emotions. And I think when we look at what to do next, where to go, you know, revisiting how do we engage, we can engage emotions without touching. You know, we can do collaboration from afar. And I think that's you know, where we should be looking. And then, so what are the considerations to take? What are the things that we want to take into consideration? How do we start to have those conversations?
Yeah, I think one of the things to think about is like, what do we have at hand, especially when you look at things like AV, and you look at the need to be probably in larger spaces than we previously thought. And sometimes those spaces are outdoors when you think about museums or informal education spaces, especially right now as we move into the warmer months, being outside, having daylight longer parts of the day. So thinking about other modalities that you start to turn up to 11. And so that's scale and imagery, it's also sound, and it's, maybe there's temperature or airflow or different types of things that you can orchestrate perhaps to have a certain outcome or to foster a certain type of experience that you want to have with people, along with vibration, those types of things that you can figure out, okay, how can you deploy them at a certain scale or in a certain space. Museums have lots of large spaces, outside the museums, and sometimes they have courtyards or auditoriums and the like. So, you can also have some pretty controlled things to think about. Again, when we talk about light, and projections, a lot of times you have to be very thoughtful about that, because what content you're going to create or experiences that you're going to create at night, might be different from what you might be doing during the day, and whether it's for children or adults or anybody, so these are just become creative considerations as well as technical.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm thinking about, because this also speaks a lot to your experiences, like, how do you think we can get there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many possibilities, and I think a lot of them we're just beginning to touch. One of the first things I think about is full body experiences in larger spaces, as you were saying. Doing vision tracking. Vision tracking is still in many ways in its infancy, and we're not taking as full advantage of it as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And these can be things that we can use our whole bodies to control, or things that we can pass by that see the flow of people as they go through. Soundscapes, creating immersive spaces and experiences just with sound. And there's a ton of opportunity there. Lighting, interactive lighting. These days, lights are LED. They can do all kinds of colors. They can do all kinds of shapes. They can move. We start taking advantage of those as elements and toys and such. We can use devices that people already have in their hands.
Right.
We can start looking at what do people bring with them when they enter the museum. How can those interact with the infrastructure we already have?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of the last point is that we should remember to bring storytelling to the forefront. I feel like in recent times, we've gotten as kind of a community a little bit lazy and sort of dependent on, we'll put some content on a touchscreen and poke at it.
Right.
So maybe now's the time to really revisit storytelling and how we, use storytelling on massive screens. How do we use it in large spaces in ways that we've kind of forgotten to do?
Yeah.
When
I'm sorry, I was just saying, what can we do differently that screens don't already do when you think about movies and other narrative forms like the stage? I mean, there's something very unique that we do, but mapping that to a narrative type of experience, I agree, is very important, and it'd be really cool.
How do we do this as people? How do we do this in a group? What kind of shared languages that can we come up with to create these things?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about, when you and I started talking about this, is traditionally when you do projects that are at larger scales, you're working with teams of people that have done this before, or maybe you're working with artists and creatives who specialize in this, right? And so they're very fluid with this type of language and these approaches. So one thing that artists and educators, designers all need to do is we need to be able to experiment with something, like with any medium, like if you take this, painting, right? You got to sort of start very small and experiment, and any kind of mechanical interactives, you have to be able to sort of play with things a bit. And so I'm wondering, like, how do we bring people that are new to this in, and then how do we allow for them to do these sort of early stage experiments to develop their ideas? Yeah. And so if you're taking people who either have worked in a very different medium, let's say in the realm of the creatives, or you're taking people who are maybe curatorial, or you're taking science staff, you're taking educational staff, like informal educators at museums, you know, how can they work at these earlier scales, and what does that team look like? Like, what does collaboration look like? Because I think that somehow you need to have tools so that people can play a bit, and it's not this fully fleshed out, mapped out experience that's totally storyboarded and everything. Like, that happens later, but what's the front 50% of that, and how do we get there? So I think that's a big consideration from my perspective. That's something that I think is really interesting and exciting. But I think that I would love to learn more from, the sort of AV experts about how can we bridge that gap, and what might that look like? Like, what from their perspective are the things they need to understand from us? How do we storyboard? How do we iterate in the very early stages? Like, how can I try this out? Like, will that lighting have the feeling that I need it to, or is if I'm trying to project a science experiment on a wall, like, even developing that idea and that projection, like, does it even work? Do I think that the visitors will understand it, for example? So these are different types of considerations and questions that I have, and I think there's an interesting path forward to start to answer them at a small scale.
Well, I think we're out of time. Let's do something together.
Okay, that would be so fun. That'd be awesome.
Thanks,
all right,
Maria.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
That concludes our recorded portion of the presentation. Now it's up to you. Please submit your questions in the Q&A window and upvote the ones that are your favorites. I'll field the questions to Sasha and Michelle. Here's our first question. Have you guys designed any voice response exhibits, and those using AI?
We've done voice reactive exhibits. The trick with voice and audio reactive exhibits is controlling the audio, because AI especially is very sensitive to ambient noise. It's sensitive to people's people's accents. So it's a tricky space, and I think we're going to see more of that going forward, and the work needs to be done both on the software side to improve the technology, and also we need to design the spaces to be quieter. We may have to do smaller spaces for individuals, et cetera, that where we can actually control the noise to make them more effective.
Yeah, I think in my work, I'm thinking about, I'm working in a healthcare facility project actually right now, creating interactives. And one thing we're looking at is people using their own devices for the audio activation piece of things, or just thinking about how we might do that so we don't have to worry about controlling that sound so much.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, unfortunately, I think we've run out of time. That concludes
Oh.
the presentation. Please complete the session evaluation, which is linked below the streaming window on the left-hand side of the page. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the show.